In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the Act.
Literally millions of Jeffrey Epstein files have just been released. And these are new details. These are things about President Trump. These are things about Bill Gates. These are things about Bill Clinton. And these are things about Elon Musk. We are going to try to get to some of the highlights of some things that are happening right now and maybe give us details and a glimpse into Jeffrey Epstein's world.
All people continue to act like this came out of thin air, as though the floor has cracked and there the new nightmare is, right in the center of the room. But it didn't. It has been accumulating through the years, layer after layer.
The DOJ announcing today that they are releasing more than 3 million pages of files in the Jeffrey Epstein probe. Now, this, of course, is pursuant to a Transparency Act that was passed by Congress. And we got to get into what we're seeing here. Now, to be clear, we're not going through 3 million pages, but we do have some highlights that we got to address. We got to put into context, too. I should also note that what is not being released and what we will probably never likely see, I should note that as well. There are things, according to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, that are allowed to be withheld under the law. These are files that contain, personally identifiable information of victims, victims' personal and medical files, any similar files, any depiction of child sexual abuse material, anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. Maybe that's a bit broad. And we may never actually know what any of this may be, but we got to take the government at its word. Anything that depicts or contains images of death, physical abuse, or injury, files covered by various privileges, so things like that. Actually, here's a section of what Todd Blanche had to say.
We complied with the Act, and there is no we did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents. And there's nothing I can do about that.
Okay, so now there's a lot here to get through. Like, for example, Epstein accomplice, convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Her arrest photos are in there. This includes pictures from her home in New Hampshire where she was picked up. How about this? An email between First Lady Melania Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell from 2002, where she seemingly writes, "Dear G, how are you? Nice story about J.E., Jeffrey Epstein, in New York Mag. You look great in the picture." Or how about the current U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, who was apparently a neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein in New York City, where he allegedly sent an email to Epstein's assistant in 2015 inviting Epstein to a Democratic fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. Remember, Clinton ran against Trump? Oh, and then there's this. Bill Gates looking to get STD medication. Bombshell allegation that President Trump assaulted a minor. We're going to put that one into context, though. A lot here, a lot I want to get into, and there's definitely more about President Trump. There's more about former President Bill Clinton, Elon Musk. I want to bring on attorney Richard Schoenstein, though, to discuss all this. Rich, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. There's a big points that we're going to get into, but just general thoughts on the release so far. After you have read 3 million pages, what are your main takeaways?
Yeah, well, I haven't read every line or watched every video or looked at every photo, and there's a lot here. But I think of it sort of the same way I think about litigation, where there are often very large document productions. And parties like to justify the way they're acting in litigation by saying, look at how many documents we produced. We produced so many documents. But often it's what's not produced. And my understanding here is there's a substantial amount of material that still hasn't been produced, and a substantial amount of material that is redacted. So we're going to look at what has been produced and analyze it as best we can, but this is not complete.
Okay, so let's start with what has been produced. And I have to start with the bombshell, okay? This bombshell concerning the President Trump. Now, there is apparently a sexual assault allegation that I'm about to read, and I want to put it into context. It seems the Department of Justice made a list of all of the sexual assault claims against the president. We don't really know why they put this list together, but it should be noted these are tips, meaning they're unverified claims. And
rumors over wise, silence over rumors, paperwork over silence, sealed doors over paperwork. And now people are doing the shock routine that there is a new load of material floating about. Material that was never intended to be seen. Material that was never intended to leak. Material that was meant to remain buried until the time of the death or infamy of every party concerned. Everything is told in the reaction. It doesn't matter what was in the files, whether it was real or fake, but the speed of the mood change. The next minute it is jokes, memes, laughs at the end of the day. The next moment it is panic, deflection, outrage, and immediate need to take control of the narrative. Such a response does not happen out of thin air. That comes from fear. Fear of context, fear of receipts, fear of individuals making the links, which never left but were deliberately disregarded. It is not only documents that are whispered.
And according to CNN, this list was in an email that was sent from the FBI New York's field office to the Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force. So you could also argue this looks to be secondhand information, maybe even third-hand information in many cases. Now, the DOJ made that clear in a statement. Quote, "This production may include fake or falsely submitted images, documents, or videos, as everything that was sent to the FBI by the public was included in the production that is responsive to the act. Some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalistic claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already." Put that to the side. But we are going to warn you, the allegations made in these tips are very disturbing. For example, quote, "Redacted reported an unidentified female friend who was forced to perform oral sex on President Trump approximately 35 years ago in New Jersey. The friend told Alexis that she was approximately 13 to 14 years old when this occurred, and the friend allegedly bit President Trump while performing. The friend was allegedly hit in the face after laughing about biting President Trump. The friend said she was also abused by Epstein." And the log states that this tip was sent to the Washington office to conduct an interview. The next tip reads, "Redacted reported she had a friend, Redacted, who was a personal assistant to Epstein in Florida from 1986 until 1991 or 1992. This friend shared names of the guests at Epstein's parties to include Bill Clinton and Donald Trump." Now, there's a call log that indicates that 2 voicemails were left for this complainant, but there was never a response. And then you have a tipster who connects the Alexander brothers, you know, the guys that are under federal indictment. They're in federal trial right now in New York for allegedly sex trafficking women. We've been covering it here on Sidebar. They allegedly have a connection to Epstein. Quote, "At age 16, while modeling, caller attended 8 parties at Epstein's New York residence. On one occasion, caller reported she was sexually assaulted by Epstein. On another occasion, 2 twin brothers, Alon and Orrin, lured caller and her friend upstairs, but they escaped back downstairs. Caller stated Orrin raped her best friend, and a third brother, Tal, raped a 14-year-old girl named Redacted. Caller named other individuals involved in, quote, big orgy parties with her, other young girls, and older Victoria's Secret models, including Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Online complainant reported she was a victim and witness to a sex trafficking ring at the Trump golf course in Rancho Palos Verdes, California between 1995 and 1996. Complainant reported Ghislaine Maxwell as the madam and broker for sex parties, clients of whom included Epstein, Robin Leach, and Donald Trump. Quote, "The guests were older men and included Elon Musk, Don Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump were there. Attorney Alan Dershowitz was also there with attorney Bob Shapiro. We were taken in rooms, forced to give to Donald Trump, forced to allow," I think this says penetration. "I was 13 years old when Donald J. Trump raped me. Ghislaine Maxwell was also present." Okay, Rich, what do we make of this? I mean, because there does become a question of whether or not these are credible claims.
Yeah, and that's really difficult, Jesse. You know, on one hand, some of what's asserted here is consistent with other allegations we've heard over the years against the president, and certainly against Jeffrey Epstein, right? This is consistent with things we've heard, but
about. It's footage, allegedly unseen footage. That is the part that everyone is nervous about, as words can be disputed, dates can be discussed, signatures can be challenged. Video is different. Video doesn't care about spin. Video does not require a spokesperson. Video doesn't forget. And even the thought that anything like such footage can exist is enough to have powerful systems sweat. The playbook is already in action. First step, doubt the source. Second step, mud the timeline. Third step, tell you it is being out of context. Fourth step, assault whoever mentions it. Fifth step, clog the internet with noise such that no one is able to know what to concentrate on. It is as usual as when something dangerous threatens to come out. Not harmful since it is violent, but harmful because it is sincere. What is interesting is that now so many people care about telling you not to pay attention. That in itself should bring in eyebrows. There is no need to aggressively refute something that really makes no sense. No one goes on a full PR war against a rumor that is not.
In these files, it's not. It's sort of sometimes secondhand or third-hand hearsay. These are allegations. These are not things that were proven in court. These are not things that were taken to court. And in fairness, it's hard to give them that much credibility without knowing more. Now, if you had these allegations, you might want to do an investigation. And I'm a little bit put back by the DOJ saying, these are meritless or these are false or none of this is true. That seems to go too far the other direction. But I don't know that we have enough information here to say we've established additional criminal conduct.
It is interesting to note, if we're questioning the transparency of the DOJ, if you really believe they were going to hide information, they never would have released this. I mean, at the very least, it's embarrassing for the president. No? I mean, so does it not give you a little bit of hope that they are releasing everything that they can release?
I see the argument to that extent. I think the DOJ has a credibility problem right off the bat because the guy who's leading this was Trump's personal lawyer. So I don't know how much credibility you can have when you're spearheading an investigation and you've come directly from Donald Trump's legal team to the DOJ to do this. That's a credibility problem. And the DOJ over the past year has had tons of credibility problems. They have credibility problems right now based on what they've said about what's happening in Minneapolis. I mean, they're telling us things that obviously aren't true if you've watched videotape. So they have a big credibility problem. It's hard to take them at their word about any of this, frankly.
Let me ask you, and to be clear, law enforcement has never accused the president of any wrongdoing regarding Epstein. He's never been criminally charged or implicated. Let me ask you about Elon Musk. Elon Musk has come up in this. So Elon Musk comes up in this document dump in an email exchange from December 2013. Quote, "We'll be in the BVI," so the British Virgin Islands, / St. Bart's area over the holidays. Is there a good time to visit? And then a response from JEE Vacation responds, "I will send heli for you," probably meaning like a helicopter for you. Quote, "Actually, I could fly back early on the 3rd. We will be in St. Bart's. When should we head to your island on the 2nd? Quote, "Did we need to organize Elon to your island on January 2nd? Now that's interesting because Musk had previously tweeted, "Epstein tried to get me to go to his island and I refused." Now it's unclear if Musk ever actually followed through with this trip, but it wasn't just the travel to the island that was discussed via email. There's one from September 2012 that reads, "What does JE think of going to Mar-a-Lago after Christmas instead of his island?" And the sender and recipient are both redacted, but it's kind of unclear whether if this was a response to this. But again, it does make me question when I read something like this, Rich, big name, flashy, but there were people who were always connected to Epstein and people who may have traveled on his jet or in his inner circle. Doesn't automatically equate to guilt. It doesn't automatically equate to them being involved in criminal activity or having knowledge of criminal activity. But I do wonder if it actually supports Elon Musk in a way.
I don't know. It is true. Jeffrey Epstein had social interactions with a whole lot of rich and powerful people, including Donald Trump, including Bill Clinton, and possibly
Harmful. No one raises allies, headlines, and talking points on nothing. Silence would be enough. Rather, we are getting overload. And the camera angle is more violent as it implies instances that were not intended to be recorded. Instances assumed to be secret, safeguarded, unconscious, moments where masks slip, instances of power being invisible. When such material is there, it would not serve the purpose of embarrassing people. It would reveal a whole ecosystem that thrives on secrecy and mutual defense. People continue to question, what is the point of this now? It is important as leverage is time. This is important since the level of trust is already low in the society. It is important as the moment when people begin to believe that there are still some hidden archives, which do not fit the smooth publicity. They lose their trust in ready answers. They begin to pose embarrassing questions, not only regarding a certain situation, but regarding all of them. And the psychological factor is there. The thought that the general population,
including Elon Musk and many others, and that is something unfortunate that we've learned, that a person who had so many did so many bad things, was able to establish these connections with the rich and powerful. But it doesn't mean that everybody he had a connection with engaged in criminal activity. I would be shocked if it meant that. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if people who did have contact with Jeffrey Epstein tried to downplay that in the wake of what we all know, even if the contact was innocent.
Let me ask you this. Based on Todd Blanche's statement that they can redact anything that's part of an ongoing investigation, does this mean that they're not, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, it's the president's own DOJ, but that they're not investigating Elon Musk, they're not investigating President Trump, and I'll talk about Bill Clinton in a minute, I'll talk about Bill Gates in a minute. Does that mean that they're not investigating them? Because otherwise they wouldn't be able to release this information, right?
I don't necessarily connect that. First of all, there's sometimes some of this stuff gets released and then pulled back. I think even today there have been some instances of things that were released and then pulled back. I don't have any reason to believe that the Department of Justice is investigating the president or Elon Musk for anything. I would be frankly surprised if they were, but I don't take that from what's been released. I just assume that from other facts.
Now, let's talk about former President Bill Clinton, who has come up quite a lot in the Jeffrey Epstein conversation. When Epstein sat for a deposition, this came out today, when Epstein sat for a deposition in the Virginia Giuffre lawsuit, this is an Epstein accuser. Remember, she filed a lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, a defamation lawsuit. This was unsealed, I believe, in 2024. In this deposition from 2016, he sits down and he would always invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when he was asked about his connection or association or friendship with President Bill Clinton or the Clinton Foundation. For example, it was questions like, please describe all dinners you've ever had with Bill Clinton. And he would say, the fifth, please describe all dinners you and Maxwell have ever had with Bill Clinton. Fifth, please describe all dinners you, Maxwell, and Virginia have had with Bill Clinton. Fifth. Or how about this exchange? Isn't it true that at the time period 2000 to 2001, you were close friends with Bill Clinton? Fifth. And even to 2002, you remained close friends with Bill Clinton, right? Fifth. Bill Clinton flew on your jet a number of times in 2002, right? Fifth. In May of 2002, Bill Clinton was on your jet several times, right? Fifth. How about this one? You've heard of the Clinton Foundation, right? Fifth. Please describe all of your interactions with the Clinton Foundation. Fifth. Is it true that you helped Bill Clinton organize the Clinton Foundation? Fifth. Did you discuss with Bill Clinton the idea of creating a foundation? Fifth. Now, Clinton has always denied the allegations. He's always denied having any knowledge of what Epstein was up to. His spokesperson said that the president cut off ties with the disgraced financier before he was charged with soliciting prostitution in 2006. But is it strange to you, Rich, that he kept invoking the fifth every 5 seconds when it came to Clinton?
So sometimes defendants or witnesses will cut off an entire line of questioning with a Fifth Amendment right. And so it may be that he was under the view that if he was asked anything about Clinton, he would take the fifth and not answer it, as was his right as being, a criminal defendant or under investigation or whatever he was at that moment. There's nothing we can do about that. I do.
Never gets the entire picture, distorts human beings. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is fatal to authority. Power requires confidence. Black and white tales, good guys and bad guys. That is obscured by these so-called files. They indicate that the truth may be uglier, sloppier, and much more organized than anyone would actually like it to be. Pay attention to the rapid change of the topic to victims, responsibility, systems, and immediately into the screaming partisanship. That's not accidental. Division is the shield, until the moment when people are yelling at one another. No one is taking a cool look at the very framework which enabled all this to occur ever since. Clarity is more difficult to manage as compared to anger. And clearness is what frightens them the most, since patterns are the result of clarity. Names, networks, habits, repeat behavior come as a result of patterns. Patterns narrate even without assigning names. Who had access? Who had protection? Who always appeared to fall on their feet? Who never had the punishment and all the rest suffered? Another myth that the rumor about the footage also disputes is that all the important is already revealed. Individuals like to assume that the worst is over.
The structure for doing everything that needed to be done to keep his world operating.
And by the way, just to be clear, we don't know for sure why he gave the money to everybody, whether or not it was, like you said, to reward. But it does beg the question, and I'll get into this a little bit more. The government's saying right now, the Department of Justice, there's nobody else to investigate, right? There's going to be no more criminal prosecutions as of right now. When you hear about her and you hear about the money that he wanted to give her, it didn't work out, and I'll explain that away. I'll explain that too. I don't know if she's ever been interviewed. I don't know if she's ever been sat for, interrogation.
Not that I've seen. Not that's been released yet, at least.
By the way, and this is also something to note as well, you put aside maybe the conspiracy theories about what happened in his death, this 20-minute unrecorded phone call that she had with him the night before he died, so maybe the last person that ever spoke to him, what do you make of that?
I would say that somebody who had intimate knowledge of him, who was in an intimate relationship, who had that final or one of the last phone calls he ever had, to not sit down and interview them, to know find out what they know, it seems a little suspicious to me. It makes you question, why wouldn't you do this? At the end of the day, yes, people want names, people want to know who's implicated in this, but at the center of this, there are a bunch of victims, a bunch of survivors who deserve answers as well. And if for nothing else, this is supposed to be the Department of Justice, the only way they're going to get justice is to have answers, and this woman could have a lot of those answers. So I'm with you. Why not sit her down and at least see what she has to say, do a recorded interview?
And by the way, I know they're still going through the documents. I don't know if there's something to suggest maybe there was some sort of interview with her or some sort of conversation. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe stand corrected. I don't know. But I do want to go through what we seem to know from these financial documents that put Shuliak at the center of the story. So you have this foundational document. It's the Jeffrey Epstein's last will and testament, but I think that funnels the money into the trust. But what I really want to get to is the 1953 trust. So it's the one that names Shuliak. And you have this particular section, and it reads, to Corinna Shuliak, if she survives me, $50 million. In addition, the trustees are directed to purchase an annuity for the benefit of Corinna Shuliak in the amount of $50 million. So that is the headline, $100 million dedicated to her. And then you have this next section, 2.3b, really breathtaking. It lists the specific properties for her. All of my interests, Zorro Ranch, New Mexico, the island known as Little St. James, the island known as Great St. James, 22 Avenue Foch, Paris, 358 El Brillo Way, Palm Beach, 9 East 71st Street, New York. Justin, these are iconic properties, the islands, the townhouse, the ranch. This has all been under a part of an investigation. Leaving it to her, thoughts?
I mean, it's a lot for somebody in their 30s. I mean, you're talking about millions, tens of $1 million of property, maybe more potentially, but I mean, it's a lot. And you have to question, why is everything going to this one person? Why are you not liquidating it? Why are you not having the state to do that? What is the method behind this, or the motive behind giving this woman all of this? There has to be a reason, and I don't even want to speculate what that reason is, because I have no clue. I don't know what's going through the mind of a madman, especially 2 days prior to his death. But it's very interesting, and I think it's one that definitely deserves a question that deserves a little bit more in-depth conversation and research. Conversation with her, perhaps.
Yeah, and apparently there was another section that created a separate multi-million-dollar fund just for her. You wonder if that's to cover maybe operating costs.
For us, that the truth has been brought to light, that the truth has been digested, and that the truth has been stored away. The notion that it is more of sitting somewhere in a vault kills that comfort. It is an illusion that closure was there. Tension could be felt in the way words are well chosen now, the manner in which messages are framed to mean nothing but can be confident. The manner in which stress is laid on the legality rather than the morality, the leaning on of technicalities like lifeboats. Once the defense has gone procedural rather than principled, you are put on notice. One more thing that catches the eye is the speed at which some individuals desire to demonetize discussion itself. And not lies, not misinformation, but talk. Curiosity becomes suspect, questions become attacks. That's a red flag. With free societies there is no fear of questions. Fragile narratives do. And even in case the footage does not come out, even in case it is buried, the damage is already caused. The mere existence has broken the surface. Deceased are questioning what they heard, what they believed, what they neglected. After that door has been opened, it does not quite close. It is not believing anything you hear. It is about the identification of behavioral tendencies in case of threatened power, the sudden urgency, the coordinated denial, the emotional overreaction. These are tells. They do not establish the contents of the files, but indicate the extent of stakes.